Hey, everybody, welcome. We are getting this live started. Super excited to have our friend Lissa from Argo Visa, and we're going to be doing an awesome interview and live Q&A plus a special giveaway. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But what I want you guys to know about is this focus is going to be about immigrant visas. I know we've covered a lot of other topics like student and non-immigrant and H-1B and tourist, but this is going to be a deep dive on immigrant visas. What are the common ones? How to prepare for those visa interviews? What's going to get you rejected? And so, especially people who want to settle or in those PR processes or maybe having relationships with American citizens, all those fun, complicated things. We're going to be breaking those all down, and I'm excited to learn. So, Lissa, welcome. Please tell us about yourself and kind of introduce yourself to the audience today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Lisa. I'm a consultant with Argo Visa. Before joining Argo Visa, though, I was a U.S. diplomat with the State Department for 13 years. And in the U.S., when you join the diplomatic corps, you do get to choose your area of expertise. And I chose consular work or visa processing for my area of expertise. I served in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Iraq, France, and in Washington, D.C. And I did process immigrant visas for 3.5 years in Paris and in Sri Lanka as well. So I'm excited about our topic today.
Yeah, what I love is you have such a diverse experience. You've served all over the world, different cultures, different languages, which is definitely going to help our audience today. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to learn more about the immigrant visas. I'm here in Dallas, Texas. Lisa, she's tuning in from up north in Canada. And so, friends, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know in the chat. Would love to see where you guys are watching from. Go ahead and let us know. And then also, we've got a giveaway going on later. We've got a special discount that we're going to be offering to people. So stay tuned for later on. About halfway through, we'll be doing a giveaway. We'll give you a special discount to get some help from our friends at Argo Visa. And then also, we're going to have Q&A at the end. So super excited. Get your questions ready. If you've got friends who are preparing for visa interviews, get them on this live session right now. Share the link. We want to make sure we can answer all those questions. But let's see where people are tuning in from. We've got Nigeria, welcome. Kenya, awesome. Iran, Ethiopia, Congo, welcome, friends. Let us know. And in the comments where you guys are tuning, we got India, welcome. Gambia, this is fun. People from all over the world. Punjab, thank you. Welcome, Shashrikal, Congo. Very, very cool. So yeah, keep letting us know where you guys are tuning in from, and don't forget to stay tuned for the Q&A and the giveaway later on. We got Nepal, Bangladesh, India. This is very cool. Okay, we're going to get this party started because we want to cover a lot of helpful things for you guys today. Okay, our first topic, the most popular immigrant visas. America has a lot of different visa types, but what are the popular immigrant ones that people are going to experience or going to be preparing for, Lisa?
Yeah, in the US, by far, the most common type of immigrant visa is family-based, meaning you're married to an American citizen or the child, parent, or sibling of an American citizen or a green card holder. The US is a bit unique that way because in a lot of other Western countries around the world, they've developed a system to attract talent to improve the economy. And so I know, like, for example, in Australia, they have a point-based system. Here in Canada, they have a point-based system where if you're of a certain age and certain education level and you can present yourself as somebody who can, be a contributing member to the economy, then, you might have a pathway to immigrate to those countries. The US is a little bit different. We do have some employment-based immigrant visas, but the large focus of our immigrant system or immigration system is family based. So most of the visas that I've dealt with around the world have been family based, and of the family based immigrant visas, spouses are the most common.
Definitely. And is that going to be through just marriage? And is that got to be in the same place, separate places? Does that kind of work out through marriage for these
Yeah, so it can be
family-based visas?
Marriage to an American citizen, marriage to a legal permanent resident in the US or a green card holder. We can
Okay.
also throw fiancé visas in there, even though the K visa for fiancés isn't technically an immigrant visa, it is treated like an immigrant visa. It has
Okay.
similar requirements for documents, proof of relationship, and for that reason, it's usually handled actually by the immigrant visa unit at an
Mm,
embassy or consulate rather than the non-immigrant visa unit. So yeah, I mean, those are definitely the most common. And then of course, if there's children involved, they would get an immigrant visa as well.
definitely, yeah, it extends to family, kids, things like that. Yeah, we do have a video on K-1 visas that we've also made. I think I did that with Ben, and so that's when you guys can check out and learn more about those K-1 fiancé visas. Um, but one more quick follow-up on these immigrant visas and kind of the family-based. Does it depend on which country that you're coming from, or is that, kinda fair game, any country has equal opportunity for these immigrant visas?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about wait times, I mean, we could do a whole nother webinar probably just on wait times. When it comes to wait times, it really depends on the category of visa. So if you're, for example, the sibling of an American citizen, you're going to be of a lower priority. And then in cases like that, the country that you're applying from can make a difference in how long you have to wait before there's an immigrant visa available to you. So, for example, I know like siblings in the Philippines sometimes can wait, 10 years or more for their
Mhm.
visa. But when it comes to an immediate relative, like a spouse or child, in that case, then, the country you're applying from wouldn't matter.
Okay.
Regardless, it takes a while for the process because
Mm,
all immigrant visas for the US are petition based, meaning you have to do a bunch of paperwork, you fill out a petition, you submit supporting documents to USCIS in the United States. They review that information and ensure that kind of, all the basic requirements are being met before they even send it over to the Department of State for an interview at a US embassy or consulate. That process is a multi-leg journey, which means
mhm.
that even for a spouse, the process can take up to a year before you get that interview at the embassy or consulate.
Sounds good. And friends, if you're able to hear us clearly, the video is good. You just hit that like button so we know that you guys are getting this information. Our next topic we want to jump into is preparing for these visa interviews. I feel like every visa has a unique visa interview situation. And so, what are things that people need to prepare for with documents and in that beginning process before they show up to that counter?
Yeah, as you say, every case is unique, but there are definitely some general tips that everybody should follow. I mean, I think the first and foremost is to understand what the consular officer is looking for in your visa interview. If it's a family-based immigrant visa, what they're really looking for is this relationship credible? Do I really believe that this is the spouse of the American citizen? Do I really believe this is the child of an American citizen? If it's an employment based visa, then they'll be looking for you to explain kind of how you found the job, what the job is, how you meet the qualifications. And so they want to make sure that the person in front of them in that visa window matches the description of what's described in the petition. So, go into the visa interview knowing that this is ultimately the goal of the visa officer so that you're ready with anecdotes, examples, stories to kind of demonstrate that that credibility is there. The second is review the document checklist that the embassy sends you right before your visa interview multiple times. And we can talk more about documents, but check that list and check it again. This is the big difference between an immigrant visa interview and a non immigrant visa interview.
Mm,
If you go in for a student visa or a tourist visa, chances are the officer is not going to want to see any documents.
mhm.
In contrast, if you're missing even just one thing from one of your documents in the immigrant visa interview, that could be a very disappointing delay in your visa being interviewed. So you definitely want to check that document list. And then bring additional proof if you can. So whether it's proof of your relationship or proof of your skills and abilities, anything that you think might help you demonstrate you are who you say you are in the visa interview will be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's something I learned new is how much more important the documents are here. I feel like some of the non-immigrant visa interviews, they care more about your story, what you say, but here the documents are important, everything filled out properly, nothing missing. And so that's a really important part to double, triple check in that preparation process.
Yeah, and some of the most common documents that trip people up, I would say, are, for example, the police certificate. You need a police certificate for every place that you've lived, over a certain
Mhm.
amount of time, and that's for every country you've ever, spent that amount of time in, and they mean it. So even if it's a major headache to get that police certificate from that country that you visited 10 years ago, you have to go through the process of trying to obtain it. Now, the State Department does have a list of, countries and where police certificates are available and not available. There are very few countries where police certificates just aren't available to people, and the State
Mm.
Department is aware of that. But if the State Department says that police certificate is available, you do have to do everything you can to get it, and they do expire too. So make sure that the police certificate that you've obtained is still valid on the day of your interview. The other thing is the medical exam causes a lot of people stress.
Mhm.
And this is done with what we call a panel physician. So that means a physician that the embassy has designated for this purpose and work closely with, so that the panel physician you meet with knows what the CDC requirements are for you to get that medical clearance for your immigrant visa. So this is to be taken seriously. And just a word of caution, they do ask about substance abuse. So that will mean like your alcohol use, any drugs that you've taken, and they can and will test for it. So just know that that can be an issue for a lot of people as well. Vaccines too is another thing. You have to have your vaccines up to date. If for some reason you don't, you do have to have a valid reason for that. It can't just be, I didn't want to get vaccinated. It has to be
Mhm.
based in something more substantial.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for laying all that out there.
Sure, sure. The last thing I can tell you about
Oh, yeah.
documents is that every
Mhm.
embassy will talk about what the acceptable documents are from a country. So, for example,
Mhm.
if you got married in Belize, there will be a description of what a marriage certificate from Belize will look like, what it'll entail. Or like France, for example, they give you a couple different documents when you get married, but only one of them is acceptable according to State Department standards as valid proof of a marriage.
Sounds good. Yeah, seems like a lot of things to follow, but there's also a lot of exceptions. So you have to be very careful about all those things. And
Yeah,
do your
definitely.
research, do your work. Make sure if you have questions, get them clarified and don't guess, don't assume, because that could hurt you down the road or delay you in big ways. So
Absolutely.
hopefully you've got all the documents, everything's clear, you're approved, and you show up for the visa interview. Lisa, what are some of the common questions that people might face or expect during their US visa interviews?
Yeah, so if you're married to an American citizen or an LPR, or even if you're going for your fiance visa, the questions are really similar. The most common will be, how did you meet? Why did you decide to get married? How did the proposal go? What was the wedding like, or where was the wedding, or when was the wedding? What and when answering these kind of questions, the applicant should be ready to be very specific about the story of how they met, how they decided to get married, and about their wedding day. And of course, there's always like going to be differences based on culture. And
Mhm.
so you can explain that. So for example, if the officer asks you, well, how did they propose? And well, in our culture, we don't really do like the proposal that you see in American movies. This is what we do instead. And then tell that story. So what the officer is looking for is, do I believe these things really actually happened and the build up to your relationship. If you've spent a lot of time apart, there'll be questions about that, like why did you spend the time
Mm,
apart? What efforts did you make to stay in touch, to communicate, to see each other, at the times that you could. So be ready with any kind of timelines if there have been significant gaps in being together, yeah, physically. Some other common questions will be about your spouse in general, about their job, about, what you like about them. And again, here the key is to demonstrate that you know your spouse, that you know the things that we expect, a close family member to know about their spouse, and then questions about other family members. So, what do you know about your spouse's parents? What do you know about your spouse's children from a previous marriage, for example? Because we expect that these are conversations that married people will have had. That being
mm,
said, it's not an exam. So if you don't know the answer to something, that's okay. It's not a reason to panic. Just explain why you don't know it. The officer might try a few like gotcha questions, like, oh, does your spouse like cats? Like, oh, well, if you don't know, that's okay. Just explain why. Say, you know what? I don't actually know because we both agreed early on that we weren't going to have pets and it's not something we've ever talked about. So just give the officer some other piece of information that explains why you don't know the answer, but also indicates that you do actually know your spouse. You just don't know this particular thing about them. And then the last thing to be aware of is they will ask about your previous travel to the US, any previous visas you've had or refusals, in case they impact the process that you're undergoing now. If you have any other ineligibilities like, substance abuse or criminal convictions, those definitely you should be prepared to talk about at your immigrant visa interview as well.
yeah, yeah. And well, I think the you said earlier how the documents have to be very neat, perfect, everything in line. I feel like with the interview, it's like you said, it's a conversation, and they want to make sure the story makes sense, that the relationship makes sense. And also, I think one thing that's helpful to know is in different cultures around the world, relationships are different, dating is different, engagements are different, marriages are different. And so, either trying to put it in terms that make sense to the American consular officers or helping them explain how your culture is different, but is still kind of meeting that criteria of legitimacy, so someone from a different culture can understand that. And so making sure you're doing that preparation and you can tell your story. And if there's anything suspicious, again, that's going to make them hesitant to want to approve you. Would you agree with that, Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think how you talk about your relationship can really differ from culture to culture as well.
Hmm.
Americans have this expectation that, everybody is happy to talk about their feelings about their spouse,
Yeah.
their feelings when they met the spouse, that it's a joy to talk about, how they met their spouse and the process leading up to marriage. And so, something that we help people with at Argo Visa is, working on being an open book and talking about your spouse in a way that meets, I guess, American cultural expectations. Because the more you're an open book and talking about your feelings and not just through your words, but demonstrating it through your body language as well, the
Hmm.
easier the visa interview will go. Because if the officer is convinced the relationship is credible, then the conversation is much shorter than if they have to ask you, you know, many questions to try to get a sense of, okay, did you just memorize somebody's
Hmm.
background and resume in order to come to this visa interview, or are you in a genuine relationship?
Yeah, yeah. No, those are some great tips, and I think this will help people to know kind of what to expect and how to make sure they communicate those stories well. And again, not a memorized script, but in a normal conversation.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so friends, aside from these YouTube channels and live streams, Chai and Coaching Argo have lots of great resources. So follow us on social media like Instagram, LinkedIn. We've got newsletters as well. the Argo Visa website has some great resources. I'll be sharing some links in a little bit. But our special chime question for you guys who are tuning in right now is, what visa are you applying for? So go ahead and tell us in the chat, leave a comment. We'd love to know what visas you guys are preparing for. What have you applied for? What visa are you preparing for? So go ahead and tell us in the chat, in the comments, and we'd love to see kind of what everyone is preparing for, and to hopefully help you guys more, especially in the Q&A coming up. So let's see, we've got B1, B2, F1. We have anyone here with immigrant visas? Let us know. We'd love to see which ones you guys are preparing for. So got a lot F1, B1s. All right, we got an EB3. Exciting. Got work visas. What else? What visa are you guys prepping for or hoping to get? Please tell us in the comments. What else do we got here? Okay, we got some more student visas, some work visas and tourist visas. Awesome. Well, welcome, friends. Again, keep throwing those in there, and connect and share too. Maybe we can learn from each other. Got K1. Okay, we got a fiance visa. Very exciting. Awesome. So keep sharing those. Okay, Lisa. Now, as people have prepared for the common questions, what are the red flags? What are the things that are going to be concerns for the visa consular officers that might cause a rejection or denial? What do people need to be weary of?
I think, especially when it comes to family-based visas, what the officer ultimately is looking for is, do I think this marriage is for the purpose of immigration only, or do I think that this relationship, if we're talking about like a blood relative, isn't real? And so the red flags for that would be, I think, having spent a lot of time apart. So
Mm,
or being newly married. So, or maybe a better way of putting it is not having spent a lot of time together. And so, if you were in a brand new relationship and decided to get married and are going for your fiance visa, or if you haven't been married very long, or even if you've been married for a while but have spent a significant time apart, especially if you don't have
mhm,
children, I think just kind of demonstrating that it is a genuine marriage, not for the purposes of immigration. And that's when, being prepared for the questions, answering with specificity, having good stories to tell about your relationship, bringing photos that span over time. So, for example, if you've been together for a while but you've never really lived in the same country together, showing us the vacation pictures that you guys take, several times a year, every year together, so that we can see that the relationship is there. Also, communications. So even if you haven't been able to see each other very many times, printing out, the communications that you guys have had, perhaps over text
mm,
messaging, email, or WhatsApp. And then in terms of like the best photographs to bring and the best communications to bring, it would be the ones that show the kind of the inner workings of the relationship. So if you print out a bunch of text messages that say, "Good morning, my love. How are you? Good morning. God bless. Have a good day. Good morning. How are you? How was your day?" It's like, okay, well, I don't know if that's a real
mhm,
relationship or not because it's very surface level. I'd almost rather see text messages where you're arguing a little bit. It's like, well, no, I told you, to pick up the thing by a certain time, then it's like, okay, marriages aren't perfect. I see there's a back
mhm,
and forth here. There's tension there, or there's love there, or there's hope there, or there's a sharing of, a lot of personal feelings, hopes, dreams, worries. That's the stuff that's really convincing, a lot more
mm,
than just kind of throwaway lines, that don't tell you much about the relationship or the people involved in the relationship. Same with photos. So, posed photos don't tell the officer very much. It's the photos where you're spending together time together with each other's friends or families that can be really that goes a lot further than the two of you, standing stiffly in a studio and getting photographed. Even though that might be a big part of getting married is having a bunch of studio photos taken, and those are lovely memories of you looking perfect and to be cherished forever. They don't tell the
Mhm.
officer a lot about whether or not these two people are in a genuine relationship. So those are the red flags for family based, and those are kind of some of the ways you can meet the challenge if you have those red flags. When it comes to employment based, I think that how you got the job can really make a difference. Being able to talk about what the job is and
Mhm.
your qualifications for the jobs are really important. It's not, that when you go in for your immigrant visa interview, whether it's EB1 or EB3. It's not the time to be humble. You want to be very explicit and very clear about who it is you are, what skills you have to bring to the job, so that there's no doubt in the officer's mind as to why that employer would want you. Or in the case of an EB1, there's not an employer, but
Mhm.
what makes you extraordinary.
Definitely. That's great. Yeah, so beware of those things, friends. Make sure you're prepared. You have clear communication, and hopefully there is no rejections. I think it's really important to be prepared ahead of time and not take a chance that first one, because once you have that first rejection, it just makes every visa interview in the future much harder. So you want to do it right the first time. So in about 2 minutes, we're gonna do our giveaway and the live Q&A. But first, we want to quickly just share how you guys can get help. Because again, I think it's really important to nail it the first time and get success the right way the first time versus trying to overcome a denial, which is just so much harder. And every rejection just makes it worse and worse. So, Lisa, what are the ways that you and our friends at Argo Visa can help and provide resources for our friends to find success, get those approvals, which you guys are so great at doing?
I mean, first, let me say you're absolutely right about the rejections. I mean, with the immigrant visa, the risks are even higher because once you're refused the immigrant visa, then the officer is going to draw up a memo, a very in depth memo explaining to USCIS why they don't believe that you're qualified for the immigrant visa. That then gets reviewed by USCIS, which means your case is now mired in a very long and complicated process. Unlike a non-immigrant visa, where if you're found 214B for having lack of ties, you can just go in and try your case again and explain things again. If you get refused your immigrant visa, I mean, this is a delay that could cost you years. So we definitely want to take the process seriously. Now that being said, like immigrant visa refusal rates are a lot lower because the bar for refusal is a lot higher, especially when we're talking about where an American citizen's interest is involved. Officers not going to refuse you just based on a gut feeling like they can for a tourist visa. K visas, fiance visas, a little bit in between there.
Mhm.
The bar isn't quite as high for refusal like it is for an immigrant visa, but it's not as low as it is for a tourist visa either. But bottom line is, fiancés do need to be super prepared if they don't want their case to be investigated, which will really delay things for them. Um, so at Argo Visa, what we do when people come in to us for help on an immigrant visa interview is we make sure that they understand kind of what the officer is looking for, what kind of questions are going to be asked, and then we do mock interviews with them. And the beauty of the mock interviews is we can really tailor the advice to that specific individual's strengths and weaknesses. We
Mhm.
can, if they have a red flag, we can really press them in the mock interview on the red flag, make sure that they're really capable of talking about why the red flag shouldn't apply to them, helping them overcome the challenge. We let them know what is sounding good, what doesn't sound good, what is going to be compelling, what is not compelling. And if they're not compelling, how to get there, so we can give them tips and advice on how to sound more persuasive to the consular officer. So it's kind of tailored in two sets, one on the specific situation of the client that comes to us for help, but also in their specific speaking style, mannerisms, and just making sure that they're absolutely ready for that visa interview, that they're feeling confident, and mitigating or minimizing the risk of having their case be delayed or worse, refused on the day of their immigrant visa interview.
Yeah, I'll just want to say how important mock interviews are. So many people I've talked to in our China coaching community are preparing the wrong ways. They're taking bad advice they're following online, or people that have never gone through a visa interview process before. And so be very careful about the advice you're following online. So a mock interview with an expert at Argo is the best. And on their website, again, I'll share the link and it's in the video description as well. They have this awesome visa checkup tool. It's a little AI chatbot that takes 5 minutes to fill out. And I've shown it in our other videos as well, where you put your name, your details, the visa, some background information, and it spits out a score. And whether you're red, yellow, or green. Red means you're probably going to get denied. Yellow means, I don't know. Green means you're probably good. But it's a way that, it's taken all this expert information compiled to one, and it gives you a score based on what you could maybe expect on how a visa officer is going to respond to you. So go check that out. Again, we've got the link in the video description. I'll share it in the chat again. But that's a great free resource, free tool to help you guys at least check and see what your kind of status is. And if you need more help, or maybe if you're good to go in your visa interview situation. So yeah. Okay. I think it's time for the giveaway, which is really exciting. So our friends at Argo Visa, they're providing a 40% discount. This is the biggest discount they've ever offered on one of their coaching calls. And so to enter, put in the chat hashtag Argo Visa. This is how you get qualified in the drawing. In the chat, in the comments, put all one word, hashtag Argo Visa, and that's going to get you entered in. And we're going to give a minute for people to do that. And then I'm going to pull up on the screen here a way for us to see the drawing. So if you guys want to enter in to get this coupon, yeah, there you go. Put hashtag Argo Visa. Akshay's got it right there. There you go. Good. So I'm going to share my screen so we can all see this. Okay, so put hashtag Argo Visa in the comments. We'll give everyone a minute here. There we go. And this is going to give you a chance to get a 40% discount with Argo, where you can get that mock interview, get that coaching call, or if you've been rejected, they can help you figure out why you're rejected and get that new strategy. So this is a great opportunity to help you guys out. But we want everyone to get a chance. So again, we'll wait 20, 30 more seconds. Put in hashtag Argo Visa. You guys are doing it correct. And then we're going to let the internet pick a random winner to see who's the lucky winner in this live interview.
And it doesn't have to be used just for immigrant visas either.
Yeah.
If you're interested in a non-immigrant, if you want to apply for a B1, B2, and F1, and you'd like to, have a consultation with us, this giveaway would apply to that as well.
Yeah, it works for any visa type, anything related to visa interviews. Fair game. Correct. And then also after this, we're going to start doing the live Q&A so you guys can start getting your questions ready for that as well. All right, so just put it in once. It's only going to count once. Just put it in the comment once. No need to keep putting it in. It's only going to count you once. So about 10 more seconds, and then we're going to click the draw. So if you want to participate and then get a chance to win, make sure you only just one time put hashtag Argo Visa. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go.
Exciting.
All right, congrats, Priscilla. the big winner. Uh, to help us out, Priscilla, can you please share your email ID in the chat with us, and then we'll follow up with you afterwards. So congrats, Priscilla. Priscilla. All right. So Priscilla, you can either share your email here or message us on Instagram or LinkedIn after this, but then we can follow up and get you the special coupon code. So congratulations. Okay, friends, thanks for your patience. We covered a lot of great information. So again, hit that like button, say thanks, give some love to Lisa for sharing a lot of helpful stuff. I learned a ton as well. But now we're gonna do live Q&A. So a couple rules. Only ask questions one time. If you ask it again and again and again, I'm not gonna pick it. And then also, we're not always gonna get to every question. That's just the reality. But if you want your question to be picked and prioritized, if you're really desperate, if you really want to answer it and brought up and pulled up for Lisa to answer, we're going to prioritize the super chats. So if you want your question to be prioritized and picked, make it a super chat and we'll make sure we get to all the super chats as quickly as possible. So yeah, start please asking your questions in the comments. The super chats are going to be prioritized, and we're going to, for the next 20 minutes or so, get through as many questions as we can to help you guys out. So let me look back here and again, with the questions too, make sure you ask clear questions. And that way we can understand, make sure the questions are clear and understandable. All right. Anderson's asking, we want to apply for a B1 visa for my wife's father so he can visit and meet our daughter. He's married, needs regular medical checkups after a recent cancer surgery. How can we present ties during this kind of interview?
Yeah, so when you're going for a B1, B2 interview, as you know, you have to have a credible purpose of travel and ties to your home country that'll compel you to return after your visit. It sounds like you already know that, Anderson, and you're wondering, well, like, how can we find these ties for my dad? What you've mentioned here obviously is a good start. The fact that he's married and has some medical needs that have to be follow up on can be ties, but just be careful because sometimes having a medical need can be a double-edged sword. If the officer thinks that your father might be better off in the US for medical reasons, then they might doubt that that's actually a tie to his home country. But generally, if your father can just, or your father-in-law, excuse me, can just speak concretely about, why he's needed by his wife, why he needs to be in his home country for these medical checkups and wouldn't prefer to do those things in the US, that would be a really good start. It's hard for me to help you, kind of develop more ties without knowing more about your father-in-law's situation. But what I can say is you're right to be focusing on what he can say that would convince the officer that he's not going to stay in the US to, live with his daughter and his grandchild and seek medical treatment in the US.
Great. Thank you. All right. Akshay is asking, I want to apply for F1 visa for a PhD. I've already had an F1 for a master's and used the 5 years with OPT and then came back. Does the social security number matter in the DS 160 for the new interview? Maybe what are some questions they can expect for this?
And the social security number doesn't matter, as long as you're not providing a fake social security number. It doesn't matter if you have one or if you don't have one. But some questions you might expect is, well, what are your ties to your home country? If you've already spent this time in the US for 5 years, like then presumably you've developed some ties to the US. You now have friends, you have a social network, you've had, employment opportunities. And so, if you go back again for a PhD and you're spending another 5, 6, 7 years in the US for your PhD, then that's a significant amount of time in the US. And why should the officer believe that you would come home to your home country after your PhD? So just be ready to talk about what your ambitions are in your home country and how that US master's degree and PhD is going to serve your ambitions back in your home country, so that the officer knows that this education plan makes sense for somebody who's coming home, not for somebody who's planning on staying in the US.
Great. Okay. Elena's asking, I just applied for an NIV here in the Philippines. My reasons to visit my grandmother. I'm currently employed and stayed in the company for 5 years, but I was declined. May I know what a red flag could be?
Yeah, I mean, having stable employment for 5 years is definitely a strength, and hopefully you talked about that in your visa interview. But the officer is looking at an application situation holistically. If you're traveling halfway around the world to visit your grandmother, one of the things the wonder is, are you somebody who travels? Have you traveled in the region? Have you left the country before? Have you traveled to visit relatives before? If you have a job, great, but how much are you making at that job? Are there better economic opportunities for you in the US? That would be, hard to resist once you got to the US, or are they convinced that you'll come back to that job? It's about how much you're being paid at the job, but also too, like, how do you talk about the job? Is it a job that you think you have a lot of potential to grow in, that you're speaking optimistically about? Is it a job that you like? What other ties do you have? Are you married? Do you have children, etc.? So it's not like the officer has a checklist. Oh, if you own a home, check. If you've got a job, check. Okay, now I can issue the visa. They're looking at, how do you talk about your reasons for travel? How do you talk about your reasons for coming back? And do they believe you? So, without meeting you in person, Elena, it's hard for me to say what your red flags are. But saying that you've been employed, with the same employer for 5 years is a good start. Visiting your grandmother in the US is certainly a credible purpose to travel. It just comes down to, does the officer believe that that's really your primary reason for traveling to the US?
Sounds good. All right. Parminder here. Thanks for the super chat. Parminder's saying I was in Canada for studies and now came back to home country after completion. What are my chances for a B1, B2? I have interview in 10 days. So does having studied in Canada, coming back home, does that have any impact on getting a tourist visa to the US?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a strength that you should highlight in your visa interview, because having studied in an economy that's, nearly as strong as the American economy, or as strong as the American economy, and then returning home afterwards, shows that you're not an economic migrant, that you're not somebody who's looking to pursue better economic opportunities, but that you went to Canada, you used your visa appropriately, and you came home, is good indication that a future visa to the US will be used in the same manner. So, I can't tell you what your chances are, because I don't know how you present in an interview. If you're somebody who gets really nervous and sweats bullets and can't get their story out, then that definitely impacts your chances. But the other thing I would say is, you also want to focus, not only on the fact that you came back, but what have you been doing since you came back?
Mm,
Have you put yourself in a situation that is a good one, that you're going to want to continue to come back to? So, are you looking for jobs? Have you found one? Have you moved, into a home? All these things will matter as well.
yeah.
Excuse
Uh, and
me.
then, yeah, Parminder, I'd say a highlight that you've been abroad, come back home, with the education, and then make sure you're clear for your purpose of why you want the B1, B2. The more clarity there, again, I'm going to go do these things and then also come back and continue this back in my home country. So making sure you kind of explain those back and forth parts of your journey and story is really important and really helpful. But yeah, thanks again for the super chat. I've got a two-part here for you, Lisa, from Wamba. Thanks for the question. He says, "Hi, I got F1 refusal from the DRC, going for another interview in Brazzaville, and this is because I couldn't get another date in the DRC. Brazzaville is the neighboring country. Any suggestions?" And then the second part is to add, I studied in South Africa before coming back to DRC, and I was really passive in my previous interview. And is speaking English in a non English speaking country going to help? So I think
Well,
sounds like they're going to go to a different country because slots weren't available. Um, and then also, yeah, any tips on um, being passive and then English communication, those kind of things.
yeah, I mean, this sort of situation would really warrant a consultation with Argo Visa because we're asking questions about strategy, but also too about presentation. I mean, what I can tell you is that if you're sticking within the region, then somebody at the post in Brazzaville is going to know that there is a longer wait time for you in your home country, and if you explain that you're simply there because this visa appointment time would allow you to start your program on time, but the other one, but applying in your home country wouldn't. That's generally an explanation that the officer will accept. Um, when it's possible to apply in your home country, though, that is better because officers in your home country are going to be more comfortable issuing you a visa than an officer that knows less about your home country. But at any rate, if it makes the difference between making your program date, then yeah, you should go ahead and go to the visa appointment that's going to allow you to start your program on time. Staying within the region, I think, is smart because at least the officer in Brazzaville is going to have some regional knowledge and feel more comfortable issuing you that visa than say somebody who's serving in Malaysia. And then the second part of the question, speaking English in a non-speaking country. I mean, I think anytime your English is good enough to persuade an officer, it's a good idea to use English because the officer, even if they've been trained in the language of the country that you're applying in, their job is easier when they get to work in English. And when their job is easier, their frustration levels are lower and I think they're more likely to understand the nuances of your situation. And so when you can speak in English, I always recommend speaking in English.
Great. Thank you. All right. We've got one from Musk. Thanks again for the super chat. It says, "Does not having a sponsor and being fully funded by a loan, is that a red flag for an F1 visa? The amount in the I-20, 1.5 times is covered in loan, only 5 lakh short covered in my FD, which was recently made. What doc should I go with?"
You know, if you read American news at all, you know that many Americans have to take out student loans in order to afford school in the U.S.
Hmm.
And given that foreign nationals have to pay even higher fees, it's totally understandable that students would need to take out a loan in order to study in the U.S. However, unfortunately, it is, something of I would say a yellow flag, maybe not a red flag. It's a yellow flag because at the end of the day, the officer is wants to know that the money you're investing in your US education makes sense for somebody in your economic situation, and even more importantly, the economic situation that you're going back to in your home country. So if you explain why this makes sense financially for you, why it makes sense to take out a student loan in order to come back to your country to do, whatever it is that you're studying, then you can overcome that challenge of having needed to take out a student loan. if you're taking out a big student loan and you're coming back to a situation where it's going to be really hard for you to repay that loan, the officer's going to feel like that doesn't make sense, in which case they're going to assume your real plan isn't to return to your home country. And if
Mhm.
they don't think your real plan is to return to your home country, then you will be refused the student visa. So I would say it's not a red flag, but it is a challenge. It's something that you should be ready to address as to why this all makes financial sense.
Yeah, and the more you can explain too, even your plans and goals to work an on-campus job, get internships, what kind of full-time roles you're gonna be going for, so you can have a plan to pay it off and not be in a financially tough situation. That's also important to communicate, like, your financial goals and plans to get that loan paid off and not let it be a burden to you or other people. Great. Thanks for asking that. Thanks, Lisa. Let's do one about K1. Our friends at Scholarship TV are asking, I'm applying for a K1 visa, and my interview is coming up on September 20th. I've known my fiance for the past 12 years. She just filed the petition last year. Is that time period too long to raise a red flag?
I think it depends. If you've been consistently in a relationship for 12 years, and you're able to demonstrate that you're meeting up all the time, communicating all the time, it's not a red flag. If you've been on again, off again, on again, off again, that's not a red flag. A lot of relationships don't take, a straight and simple path, but you should just be ready to explain it and talk frankly about it. I wouldn't try to hide it. Remember, the officer not trying to determine if you're in the perfect relationship. They're just trying to determine that you're in a real relationship. And it's even okay sometimes to have a sense of humor about things. If you've proposed to your fiance many times and she's only now after 12 years decided, okay, I'm going to go for it. You can tell that to the officer and even joke about it a little bit. Um, every relationship is unique and looks different. Officers understand that it's not in what your relationship is so much as how you talk about it.
Great. Um, let's check this one out. All right. Nora is asking, can you apply for a visitor visa if you have an ongoing family petition? Been in the US 10 years ago on a visitor visa and came back. How does that work?
Yeah, so this is a great question because it's such a double-edged sword to have that pending immigrant visa petition because on the one hand, by having an immigrant visa petition, you are acknowledging, or it's in the official record that you do have a desire to move to the US and stay in the US. So you can't say honestly that you don't have an immigrant intent. But of course, two things can be true at once. You can have a long term immigrant intent, but a short term intent to just go and visit and come back. Because why would you go and stay in the US illegally if you have a legal path on the horizon? The fact that you've been to the US before and come back definitely also helps you as well. But I think you'll be surprised how often visa officers refuse people with a pending immigrant visa petition because they think that people just aren't going to be patient enough to wait for the process to
Mhm.
play out, or because they think that that person perhaps doesn't have confidence in their immigrant visa application. And so now they want to take the B1, B2 and go and just stay in the US. So it's gonna, again, it comes down to your interview and your answers to the questions, how you're able to explain, both the long-term plan and the short-term plan in a way that makes sense to the officer and they believe that you will come back in the short term.
Great. Thanks for explaining that. Here's another fun one. Bun from Ghana. They have an I-130 petition, but withdrawn because of a divorce. Their employer is sponsoring me now to do a master's in finance. They've been to Canada twice. They've been refused for a B2 visa. What tips would you have for them to go about this now as they're trying to do their master's in finance with all these other things in the context?
Yeah, I mean, if as long as there wasn't any fraud in your previous marriage or I-130 petition. That shouldn't have any impact on your current immigrant visa application. Relationships don't work out, marriages end. That shouldn't reflect negatively on a new immigrant visa petition by an employer. Same with a previous B1, B2 refusal, as long as the refusal was kind of a typical refusal for lack of ties. That shouldn't have any bearing on your immigrant visa petition. The part of this question that I don't really understand is how an employer can sponsor you to do a master's in finance. I think perhaps what you might be talking about is a student visa where your
Mhm.
employer is offering to pay. If you're going for a student visa and not an immigrant visa, then you do have to demonstrate they have ties to your home country. And I'll be honest with you, having been refused a B1, B2 two times already is going to reflect negatively, most likely, on a student visa petition because, or a student visa application, because a student visa has that same requirement that the B1, B2 does, that you have ties to your home country. So if you've been refused because of lack of ties for a tourist visa, you could also be refused for lack of ties for the student visa. Having had that immigrant petition before does demonstrate at one point you were willing to leave all of your ties in your home country and move and live in the United States. I mean, that alone wouldn't be a reason to refuse a student, but it is something that I would say should be addressed in your visa answers. So long story short, if I'm understanding the question correctly, you're applying for a student visa, your employer is paying, but you've been refused a B1, B2 two times, and you've had a withdrawn I-130 petition. I do think that there are some challenges for you,
Mhm.
and I would highly recommend a consultation with Argo Visa so that we can help you overcome those challenges by really solidifying what your current plans are, how things have changed since your divorce, and how to overcome whatever the B1, B2 refusals were based on.
Yeah, coaching can definitely help you out. Here's kind of a two-part. So we've seen these questions kind of come up as a theme. So the first part is from Anderson. What's the best time to present ties? I'm guessing home ties during the interview. If the questions, if they're not asked directly, how can they talk about home ties? And then also wondering just what are strong home ties? So what are home ties? What are good home ties? And then how can people bring them up appropriately? What's the good time in that interview to communicate them?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the category of visa you're applying for, but the strongest ties are always the economic ones. If mom and dad, if you're saying like, oh, I'm going to come home because mom and dad live here. I mean, there's just too many examples, and by many I mean millions and millions of examples of people who leave their family behind in order to pursue better economic opportunities. And it's not because consular officers think like, oh, you don't love your family. It's because they know that you love your family, and when you love your family, oftentimes you're willing to make that sacrifice of being together physically in order to better your family situation back home by going abroad, working, earning money, and sending home. So what are the strongest ties? It's the economic ones. If you have a good job, if your family is of a certain socioeconomic status, which indicates that you wouldn't need to work in the US in order to have money back home. I mean, those are the ideal kind of economic ties or ties to home country. When do you bring it up? Ideally, the first words out of your mouth will indicate your tie to your home country. Why do you want a student visa? Why do you want to go study a master's in the US? Well, I currently have an amazing job at a multinational company. I'm looking, here in my home country, I'm earning this amount of money. However, I'm looking to become a manager or to become an executive. And in order to do that, an American degree would be really helpful beautiful. So before you've even talked about why you want to study in the US, you're telling the officer what your tie is to your home country. Why do you want to go on vacation in the US? Well, I've currently been hard charging here in my home country at my job where I earn X amount of dollars, or where I've started my own business. Now's the time that I'm really ready to take a break and enjoy the fruit of my hard labors. So I'm looking to take my family to Disneyland for 2 weeks. So early and often when it comes to mentioning your home ties.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. We're crossing the hour here. Do you have time for maybe one more question, Lisa?
Sure, one more.
Okay, great. Um, Kritika is a J1 visa applicant and was denied just a couple weeks ago. How long should they wait to reapply for it? And maybe just in general, what's a good suggestion for when can people reapply after a denial?
This really depends wholly on why you were denied. So, Kritika, if you think you were denied because you didn't present yourself well and you're actually qualified for the visa, meaning that you qualify for the J1 and you have those home ties and you just didn't present well, I say apply again right away. It's not like waiting 2 weeks, 2 months is going to make a difference in terms of your situation. So you might as well just try again right away, preferably after a consultation with Argo, so we can help you identify why you were refused and make sure that you don't make the same mistakes again. But if, on the other hand, you know in your heart of hearts that you don't have the ties, that you don't have a strong case for the J visa, then don't go back, make the same mistakes, accumulate a bunch of refusals that make it really hard for you to overcome in the future when you're a better qualified applicant.
Awesome. Thank you so much, friends, for joining. I know we didn't get to all the questions. A lot of them were F1 related, but we've made a lot of other content and done a lot of other live sessions, especially with Argo on F1 visas. So you can go find those on our playlist. Argo Visa also has some great videos on their channel for F1 visa and student visas. Lisa, thank you so much. This was amazing. I learned a lot. And yeah, what do you want to leave our friends with as we wrap up here?
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for everybody for all the questions. I guess I'll just leave you with this, that at Argo Visa, we're a team of former visa officers that have experience from all over the globe in all the visa categories. We love helping students, tourists, business travelers, O visa applicants, immigrant visa applicants, whatever your issue is. If it relates to the visa interview, we would love to meet you and help you.
Yeah, be sure to give thanks to Lisa in the comments and in the chat. She did a great job. I learned a lot. We want to see you guys thrive and succeed. So when you guys get approved, let us know. Send us a message. We'd love to see you guys succeed. And again, if you need that help, connect with Argo. We got the links. Use their free visa checkup tool. It's amazing. It's a great first step that's free. And yeah, connect with us online on social media. And thanks for tuning in, friends. Let us know the next topics we want to cover. We did this specific topic because you guys were asking for it. So if there's another topic you want us to cover, let us know and we'll do it. Have a great week, everyone. Best of luck. Thanks, Lisa. Goodbye, everybody.